everybody, I've got kind of a fun video for you. A bad video for my wallet, but this is the Ford Excursion, the largest SUV ever made. And I do think that is a true statement, because even by modern day standards, this is larger than like an Expedition Max. This is larger than a Suburban, even the latest one. And in this video, we're gonna find out how much does it cost to fill up a Ford Excursion now that gas has gone through the roof. Now, it's probably no secret to you that because of world events, gas prices have really shot through the roof. It's not uncommon to see $4, $5, $6, and in California, maybe even $7 per gallon. Now, around here in Colorado, I've been typically seeing between like $4 and $5 a gallon. And that's gonna get expensive when it comes to filling up an Excursion, because this is our 2000 Ford Excursion. It has a 44-gallon fuel tank, which is one of the largest fuel tanks I think I've ever heard of fit to a factory SUV. I'm not sure it really gets much bigger than 44 gallons, at least from the factory. And that is to feed an absurdly big engine. Now, the 2000 Ford Excursion was powered by a choice of 3 engines actually. At the base end of the lineup was a 5.4 liter V8, the Triton V8. To be completely honest with you, I'm not sure I've ever seen a Triton V8 powered Excursion, because when you're dealing with a vehicle that's like 60 feet long, 5.4 liters just isn't enough power, especially when you consider the low output of these naturally aspirated V8s of the early 2000s that Ford was producing. Now, the top dog engine in 2000 was the 7.3 liter diesel, the Power Stroke, and that is a legendary engine, but super expensive. To find a 7.3 liter Power Stroke diesel Excursion nowadays is going to be like $20,000, $25,000, $30,000, and we had a budget of under $10K for this beast, so we got the V10. That's right, V10. Now, 6.8 liter V10s, these are pretty common in Excursions. You see a lot of them equipped with this engine, and you gotta figure when this thing was new back in the early 2000s, gas was pretty cheap, and this made a lot of sense. Now, when you hear the word V10, you're probably thinking like Lamborghini or Viper, but not like big 90-passenger SUVs. But the V10 engine by Ford is a really interesting story. So it's also called a Triton. It made 310 horsepower in the year 2000 and 425 pound-feet of torque in this application. Now, this is a pretty interesting engine, right? Because I think what Ford wanted to do was bridge the gap in their commercial lineups between like a typical V8 and then a large diesel. So you see this engine in a lot of applications that are not really intended for day-to-day residential or civilian use, however you want to describe it, right? So you see these engines in RVs, very common in RVs. And like box trucks, like F650s, they use Triton V10s. Tow trucks use Triton V10s. And they built this engine from the year 1999 through, I think, 2019 or 2020. So over 2 decades. Now, they did change it a little bit. So this one is a 2-valve V10. And then in 2005, I think they went to the 3-valve version, single overhead cam. For my European viewers out there, this is going to seem like a silly thing. 310 horsepower out of a 6.8 liter V10. That's like 45 horsepower per liter, which I think is pretty accurate. But you got to consider this was a commercial application. It was meant for people that were using them in dump trucks and tow trucks and that kind of thing. So it was built to be low stress, fairly reasonable torque, and last a super long time. Now you're probably thinking, well, what's the fuel economy on the Ford Excursion? Not rated. No, I kid you not, it's not rated. You see, here in the US, we've got very specific fuel economy rules that every vehicle, new vehicle before it's sold on the market, has to have an EPA fuel economy rating. That's where you see the highway, the city, the combined number. But for whatever reason, and I'm sure there's a very good reason for it, vehicles with a high GVWR, so like big trucks and even heavy duty trucks and dualies, they don't have to be rated. And I think the cutoff is 8,500 GVWR. So gross vehicle weight rating of 8,500 pounds or more. This one is a GVWR 8,900. So as such, Ford was like, the fuel economy is what the fuel economy is. We don't have to tell you. All right, let's take the V10 Excursion for a ride. Now, at least for me, when I hear the term V10, I think of like high revving screamers of supercars that rev like 9,000 RPM and are very charismatic. This is none of that. To be brutally honest, it's such a kind of a weird driving experience behind the wheel of these V10 Excursions, because they're slow. They're so slow. At least up here with 160,000 miles, actually 170,000 miles, they just don't get out of their own way. So let me point it down the road here and we'll floor it. All right, pretty good burst of torque right off the line. It kind of just like progresses down the road. It doesn't so much as accelerate as just like waft. And it certainly doesn't rev high. This thing shifts at somewhere around 5,000 RPM when you're really pushing it. Now that isn't to say it's a bad engine, because I actually really like it. A couple of things which really stand out about the V10. Incredibly smooth. Like, I am not sure I have ever felt an engine that idles smoother. I'm even talking about like the latest engines such as straight sixes, which are known to be inherently smooth. You come to a stoplight or a stop sign like this, I mean, you don't feel a single vibration. Nothing. It is so refined at idle. And even when you're driving along, like, it doesn't shake, it doesn't rattle, it doesn't click, it doesn't do anything to let you know that it's even running. It's genuinely almost like Rolls-Royce smooth. That's how smooth this V10 is. And it also makes kind of an interesting sound. It doesn't have kind of that like odd fire burble of a V8. It doesn't shout or scream like an inline six. It kind of just it's got kind of like a low baritone that turns into like a medium yell at higher RPMs. I think with an exhaust, these things could sound pretty darn cool. And it's a reliable engine. Now, these early models did have issues where they would occasionally go ejecting a spark plug off in outer space. This one had that happen once, according to the previous owner. But yeah, I mean, they're under stress, right? 310 horsepower out of a V10 with nearly 7 liters is a good recipe for a long-lived engine. It's got fairly low compression, it's got no fancy turbochargers or direct injection or anything like that. It's got fuel injection, it's got a crap ton of cylinders, and it's got kind of this lazy, lethargic way of getting you down the road. But yeah, they last a super long time. Alright, so I need to run this thing out of gas. Actually, it'll take me longer than you think, because this is a 44-gallon tank, so we're going to get it low enough to fill up and see how much it costs, and then I'll come back, probably be wearing a different shirt because it'll take me a little while, and we'll see how much it costs to fill up. Alright, so we just pulled up to our local gas station in the 2000 Ford Excursion. The fuel gauge is reading under a quarter tank. I typically like to fill up right around a quarter tank. I think that's pretty typical of a lot of people on the planet. Now, what about fuel economy? Well, we do have a little computer up here, and the computer is reading 10.4 miles per gallon average. And I actually think I can change the units on that for all you folks in Canada. 22.7 liters per 100K, but 10.4. Now, this vehicle, as we've talked about, not officially rated by the EPA, but I've done a lot of digging on forums, and it seems like 8 to 12 is pretty typical, maybe up to like 13 or 14 on the highway. Now, what about the fuel we need to use? Well, I have the owner's manual here. Go to page 186. Your vehicle is designed to use regular unleaded with an octane rating of 87. Now, here in Colorado, we actually have a regular rating of 85, but we'll follow the Ford recommendation and stick 87 in it, and that means we're going to be paying $4.40 per gallon. So we'll see what happens there. Oh, and one more thing, we always use the same method, the 2-click method, and people give us heck about it, thinking that you're going to damage a vehicle one of these days. But actually, if you look in the Ford Excursion Owner's Manual, there's a part here where it says, don't fill up with just 2 clicks. Allow three automatic click-offs when filling. 3! So that's a little excessive. We'll stick with our 2 with 30 seconds in between. All right, let's go light a credit card on fire. Now, to be totally honest with you, on any other day, if I wasn't doing this as part of this experiment, I'd probably use 85 because it's an old soot bomb, but we'll go by the Ford recommendation of 87. Well, $94, 21 gallons delivered. This is a 44-gallon fuel tank, so either I maxed out the credit card, which I think could have happened, or it's filled up. Let me try it again with one other card. You know what it is, I think? This pump has a $95 limit, I bet. I've seen 100, I've seen 75, but not 95, because now it won't pump anything. So, time to start again. We'll do a second swipe of the card and keep fueling up. All right, second swipe. Yeah, it's still going. We didn't top it off. All right, that's $120 in gasoline. Keep in mind this vehicle was $8,000. So we're going to see a percentage of the vehicle spent on gas on this one fill-up. Alright, so $45.71 on this fill up. That was an additional 10.391 gallons. So let me do some math here. We spent 140 bucks, just almost 141 bucks, and we used, what's that, 31 gallons. So we still had another 13 gallons left in the tank in this excursion, which is like the fuel capacity of a lot of small cars. Now this will be funny. Let me do a little bit of math here. Let's see. All right, that was about 2% of the value of the entire vehicle was spent in gas on this one fill up. That's pretty painful. So in that last tank, we drove 370 miles, divide that by 31 gallons added. Oh, okay, 11.9 miles per gallon, so the computer's a little pessimistic. Almost 12 mpg. Now guys, let me know what you think in the comment section below of lighting your credit card on fire in this episode of TFL Classics. We'll see you on the next vid.